So greetings from Pennsylvania once again, and it's time for another one of our family history videos. Haven't done one of these for a while, just kind of been busy doing other things. But it's time to get back into that again. Actually, today is the first day of deer season here in Pennsylvania. This is a Saturday, November 26th. So we'll be staying out of the woods for several weeks. So it's a good time maybe to hit up some cemeteries again. Speaking of which, we're back up here in Schuylkill County. Gonna do some follow-up on my video about the Kramer side of my family, because we kind of ended that video. Well, we started that video by we started with Paul Kramer, my grandfather. Started visiting all the different seminaries, going back in time, and we finished here, not too far from Auburn. This is St. Paul's Church along Somerville Road, and we found Thomas Kramer up here. That's as far back as I could go at the time of that video. But I've learned some new information since then. And we'll also be visiting some of his sons. His sons, Isaac and Francis, fought in the Civil War. I got some more information about that. Oh, and Thomas, his wife, is buried here too. When I came here the first time, I couldn't find his wife. I didn't even think she was buried here, but she is. And there's a reason I couldn't find her the first time. But we'll get into all of that. Let's find Thomas first again, though. Yeah, so let's see if we can remember where Thomas was. Remember when I came here the first time, it was the hardest time trying to find him. I even had like the row number he was in and everything, and that just didn't work out. But I kind of remember what his tombstone looked like. It was just a little one. I think it's up here somewhere. There was a smaller one like that one right there, but that's not Thomas. I think is this him right here? This little one? No, that's not him. But it has that same look to it. Alright, we'll look around a little bit more here. Okay, so I'm having a little bit of difficulty finding him again. Actually, that might be it up there, but I did find his wife. We'll visit that in a moment. She's just right up here. Alright. It was a smaller one. It was very low to the ground, I remember. It was right in this area. What was that one right there? Remember, you could hardly read all of it because it was kind of half buried. Oh yeah, that is him. Cool. Okay. Yeah. Thomas Kramer. Probably shaded out really well. Born in 1792, died in 1877. And his wife is just right up there then. His second wife, that is. Yeah, so this is where I ended that first video, right here where I found Thomas right behind me. And I didn't really know where to go from there. I had an idea of who his ancestors were, but at the time I couldn't link him to anybody. But a viewer did reach out to me and give me some extra information. There's two folks that I figured could be his father. One was a Johann Heinrich Kramer, or John Henry, and one was a John George, or a Johann George Kramer, depending on how you say him and how research you come across. But Johann Heinrich is buried just down the way here, so that made him a good candidate. But man, does it get confusing though? The Johann Heinrich down there had two wives as well, and a lot of the research you do just shows his second wife and her children, which wouldn't include Thomas. But then I found out that Johann Heinrich had a first wife who died in childbirth sometime later. That makes the research so confusing because they had several wives. And when you look up the information online, a lot of that's posted by people like me. I haven't posted anything yet, but other people like me doing this kind of stuff, and they're posting the information that they found online, but they're only including the information that pertains to their family line. So when they include the children of someone like Thomas or other people, they don't always include all of them, and that can just get kind of confusing sometimes. And Thomas himself here also had two wives, not at the same time, but his second wife was Esther Schwenk, and she's buried up there. Because I noted that according to the marriage records, he hadn't married till he was in his 40s, which was kind of unusual back then. But it turns out that he had a first wife who probably died, giving birth to children. That's how it often went back then. It could have been something else too. A lot of diseases occurred back then that weren't as treatable as they are today. But so he did have a first wife. I was trying to remember what her name was in my research, but I'm not descended from her, so I'm more concerned about Esther, the one that I am descended from. And I had trouble finding her. I didn't think she was buried here. But it turns out she is, but they spelled her last name differently. Of course, Esther Schwenk is her maiden name, but of course it would have been Kramer too. But on his tombstone it's spelled K-A-R-M-E-R, but on hers it's spelled K-E-E-M-E-R. So when you look up the records, I went on to find the grave and was looking up the records here. I typed in Kramer, and she didn't come up because I spelled it with an A instead of an E. So she was here all along, but because of the spelling, I couldn't find her. All right, let's go find her first here, and we'll come back and talk a little bit about who his possible ancestors are. So again, right here is Thomas, and his wife is buried back here. She wasn't too difficult to find, actually. There was a picture of it online on the app Find a Grave, and on that picture it showed, see that big blocky one back there? I could see that on the picture, so I knew she was somewhere in front of this one. So right here she is. I don't believe this flag goes to her. I found this flag just laying on the ground. It probably goes over this one right here, but because she was not a veteran. All right. Yeah, so here she is. It's probably hard to read, but it says Esther Schwenk, wife of Thomas Kramer. But here it has his name spelled with an E, but on his actual tombstone it's an A. Of course, she was born 1818 and died in 1890 something there. It looks like she was 73 years old. So that's his second wife. And my great-great-great-great-grandmother, I believe, if I got the number of greats right. So it's kind of cool to actually find her now. But yeah, I did do some research on her parents, and I could follow the Schwenks and some other ancestors of hers back into the 1600s. I'm not sure if we'll do a video on that sometime, because most of those people, maybe there's a few of them that we'll be able to find the graves on. We might do that, but a lot of them are going to be from folks that are living back in Europe, and I'm not, as of now I can't do a video on that. I mean, I could mention them, but we can't visit any of those sites just yet. Maybe someday, but we might do a video on her ancestors at some point. All right, so there's Esther. There's quite a few other Kramers in here. I see another tombstone up there. There was another Kramer in here that was also a Civil War veteran. So they lived in this area. So back to Thomas and his descendants. I was pretty sure I was related to someone known as Andreas Kramer. We'll just call him Andrew Kramer. He was probably the original Kramer that moved into this part of Pennsylvania. He immigrated to Pennsylvania. He was born in 1712, if I have that date correct, but came over here early 1700s, mid 1700s. I think started off more in Lebanon County, then moved over into Berks County, which is just across the other side of the mountain. Then he had multiple children, but the one son that I was pretty sure he was descended from was Johann George Sr., because he's the one that lived in this area. He's the one that came to the north side of the Blue Mountain, to live in what's today called Schuylkill County. Back then there was no Schuylkill County. And then he had a ton of sons. So there's two possibilities I considered. One was John George Jr. and then that John Henry I mentioned, Johann Heinrich. But a viewer reached out to me and gave me some information. His mom does a lot of research on the Kramers, and he said that Thomas's father was John George Jr. So I'll take her word for it. I don't have any hard evidence yet that's who Thomas's father was. Right there's Thomas again, but for someone, I'll take her word for it. She's done far more research than I have yet. I don't know how many hours I spent online looking up all kinds of records, dates and censuses and stuff, just trying to find out information about who his father was. But I was pretty sure that he was descended from John George Sr. and then thus Andrew Kramer. I just didn't know which son of John George Sr. was his father. Just seemed the obvious connection. But yeah, it does get complicated. Like I said, with spelling is crazy sometimes with these names. And plus, I made a mistake too. I was researching Kramers in Schuylkill County, and I was running into all kinds of trouble because prior to 1811, Schuylkill County did not exist. It was part of Berks County. So here I was looking for information that didn't exist. I was typing Kramers. I was looking for census records for Schuylkill County, and the oldest I could find was 1820. I was like, well, why are there no census records before then? Well, it's because Schuylkill County didn't even exist. So you got to take that into account. And also, when it was part of Berks County, all of Schuylkill County was known as Pine Grove Township. You go state, county, and then townships are the smaller part. So all of this was Pine Grove Township. But I was looking, but where I am now, I think, are we in South Manheim Township? Something like that. It didn't exist back then. It was all Pine Grove Township of Berks County. So it just gets, that can get confusing too. So anyway, but that does give me some closure concerning who Thomas's parents were. I figured, like I said, I figured it was one of those two sons, John George Jr. or John Henry. So John Henry is buried down here somewhere. We might look for him on the way back, because he's technically an uncle of mine, a great uncle then of some sort. We'll see if we can find him, and then we'll be heading back over down to Auburn to look for at least one of Thomas's son. Francis is buried down there, and a cousin of theirs, Daniel. And then we'll be heading over the mountain again to Strausstown to find Isaac, and we'll talk about their Civil War service. Let's just see if we can find Johann Heinrich. Yeah, so Thomas and his wife were up there. I did look on a map at where John Henry was buried, and it was just down from there. But the problem with these, though, as with a lot of the older ones, is that they're all written in German and they're almost impossible to read. So I'm not sure we're gonna find. Might come back another day to look, but we'll see. I have to double check some of the information. But yeah, some of these are pretty slick. All right. What's this? There's a William. Oh, Kramus. Not Kramer. Alright. And of course, that leaves us too with the problem of where Thomas's ancestors are buried. Where is John George Jr. buried? John George Sr. and Andrew Kramer. I couldn't find any information as to where they're buried. I think the two John Georges are buried up here in Schuylkill County somewhere. Pretty sure Andrew Kramer is buried somewhere over down Berks County yet, but where? I don't know. I don't know if there's actually, sometimes on these older burials, I'll show you a few here, it's just a field stone with no names on it. Or sometimes the old homestead cemeteries get destroyed or lost to time too, so I'm not really sure. As of now, I'm not really sure where they're buried. If you're a viewer and you know, go by all means, let me know in the comments. Yeah, like here's a couple of these really old tombstone markers. It's just a field stone. There's no carving or engravings on it. Same with that one right there. Oh, I want to have a few syllables on it, but there's another one. It's just a rock. Like a field stone we call it. There's nothing on it. Unlike some of the ones up there. And also you notice there's gaps. There's probably people buried in here that don't even have a marker anymore. So some of my ancestors could be in here, just not even knowing. Don't even know it anymore. But I think we'll finish our search for Johann Heinrich for another day. The angle of the sun is just not good today. You can see the writing is on this side, but the shadow, that's all in shadow. It's better to come when the sun is shining at a different angle to see these. But if I find out any more information about like John George Jr., John George Sr., and Andrew Kramer, some of his older ones, I might make another video for that. I'm not sure if there is anything about where they're buried or not. But I think let's head on over to Auburn, like I said, to the next cemetery. I'll see you over there. Alright, so here we are back at St. John's Church here in Auburn. Of course, we were St. Paul's Church was out that way, east of here. We stopped in to see Thomas again. So here we're looking for Daniel and Francis again. We found them here. First time we did some research. Of course, Francis is the brother of Isaac, who is I believe my great-great-great-grandfather. I'm pretty sure Daniel was their cousin. There were a whole bunch of Kramers up this way. Let's see if we can find them again. Alright, it was cool because we discovered that both Daniel and Francis had fought in the Civil War. But I'll talk a lot more about that when we go visit Isaac at the next stop. Of course, Isaac's buried on the other side of the mountain in Berks County, in Strausstown. I think they were just up here. Okay, so yeah, I see Daniel up here. His wife Lydia. I think over there was a Ben Kramer, which is be Daniel's father. Figured out later when I got home. I think Francis is over here. Is this Francis? No, where is Francis again? Oh, Francis was nearby here somewhere. Maybe he's up here. We'll look for him in a moment. But Daniel, yeah, there it is. Company F, 116th PA Volunteers. Because I looked up too, he was a musician in his infantry. That's kind of cool. Not sure what he played. But there's his flag. This doesn't have the Civil War marker for it. Like I said, I'm pretty sure Daniel was a cousin to Isaac and Francis. Oh, this is Francis right up here. Yep, Francis Kramer, Company F, 116th Regiment. Of course, he was wounded in the Civil War. On I believe May 5th of 1864, he was wounded at what was called the Battle of the Wilderness. But I'll talk more about that campaign when we get to Isaac's grave. Like I said, we'll talk more about the history of this. Yeah, so Francis is kind of like a great uncle, I believe. If I got the number of greats right, if that's how it works. But yeah, it's cool. It's cool just learning about your family history and things like that with the Civil War. I know there was another Kramer up here somewhere too, a Pierce Kramer White. I think he's just right up there. But yeah. Oh yeah, and a musician. Daniel was a musician. Pretty sure they're cousins, like I said. But I definitely did not inherit any of that musical ability from that side of the family, I shall say. Yeah, I couldn't really find that Pierce Kramer. I couldn't really figure out if he was a cousin of mine either. Well, cousin from way back when. But I know the regiment and company he joined didn't join until like 1865 during the Civil War, so near the end of the Civil War. But like I said, I'll talk more about Isaac, Francis, and Daniel and what battles they fought in and campaigns like that once we get back over the mountain to Strausstown. Gotta find Isaac over there again. Alright, speaking of Isaac, let's head over the Blue Mountain. You can see it back there in the distance. Let's go visit Isaac again. Hopefully we can find him. Alright, so we are back at the church here in Strausstown. I believe was it Zion Blue Mountain Church, I believe it's called. Of course, we're here looking for Isaac Kramer. We were just over the mountain there looking at Daniel and Francis's graves. We're talking about how they were in the Civil War. Isaac was in Company G of the 116th Regiment, whereas, like I mentioned, Daniel and Francis were in Company F. So once I find his grave, I'll tell you more about where they fought during the Civil War. I do have plans to go and visit some of those spots in the future. I think that'd be kind of cool to kind of visit some of the spots that your ancestors fought in. Of course, Isaac's son is buried here too, John. We found both them here. We did the first Kramer video. So let's go. I think they're both up here somewhere, if I can find them again. But yeah, it's just a beautiful day here. This is the Saturday after Thanksgiving, if I haven't told you yet, but I think they're up here somewhere. I know one of them was just up here. Alright, what took me like forever to find Isaac, he's right there, but most of the tombstones are facing towards me. Like you can see the names on them, but for some reason, Isaac and his wife, their names are facing, this side's blank, their names are facing that way. So I was like scanning and scanning. I was almost positive they were in this area, but then, so you know what, I noticed the flag with the Civil War marker there. And I figured, hey, that might be it right there. So there you can see the Grand Army of the Republic. And here he is, Isaac Kramer. There's his wife, Lydia. Yeah. We found you. Yeah, so as mentioned before, Isaac and his brother Francis and their cousin Daniel, they were part of the 116th Pennsylvania Volunteers. And Isaac was Company G, and the other two were in Company F. And if you look up the 116th Regiment, there's some interesting history on it. Because some viewers sent me some information too, and made some comments in my first video. However, not all that history applies to Isaac and his brother and his cousin. They didn't join till February of 1864. The 116th Regiment has quite a rich history. They fought in Gettysburg, Battle of Fredericksburg, Chancellorsville, a lot of those famous battles. They're also, I think, a big part of them were known as the Irish Brigade, but in those battles they suffered heavy losses. And in the spring of 1864, their commander was allowed to form some new companies to fill back up the ranks. And some of those companies were E, F, and G, and they were obtained from the general Philadelphia area, which would include this area as well. So like I said, these companies were formed in February, I think February 19th of 1864, and they were released from service, I think July 14th of 1865. So they served for, over a year. And they were involved in what was known as the, sometimes called the Overland Campaign or the Peninsular Campaign. It was an effort to take the capital of Richmond down in Virginia. And some of the famous battles, I have some of the battles listed here. Some of the battles, Spotsylvania, Cold Harbor, the Siege of Petersburg. Of course, they fought in the Battle of the Wilderness, where I think it was Francis was wounded. So those are some of the battles. I don't know if they fought in all those battles, but it was interesting. I looked up the Battle of the Wilderness. I do plan on visiting that spot in the future, and you can kind of see right where they were. You can look up what brigade they were in and all kinds of stuff, and it shows you on maps where they fought. There's a place called the Orange Plank Road down that way at the Battle of the Wilderness, where they fought, and where possibly Francis was wounded, right in that area. So we'll visit some of those areas in the future. So it's kind of cool to think you can kind of visit some places where your ancestors fought. So I think we'll do that in the future. Yeah, so Isaac and his brother and his cousin, they didn't fight in those earlier battles, like I said, like Gettysburg and Chancellorsville. It wasn't until 1864 that they joined up. But it's still cool to learn about your ancestors that way, to realize or to learn about what battles they fought in and things like that, and then to have the ability to go and visit those sites. Like I said, we'll do that in the future, go and visit some of those sites, those battles where they fought. Alright, but there's more family history series videos going to be coming up too. I've got some other lines of the family to explore. I think we're going to do the Eberlys next. That's on my mom's side. My grandmother's maiden name was Eberly. I think we'll kind of research them next, I believe, that family line. I already did a lot of the research for that, finding where a lot of them are buried and stuff like that. Alright, as always, thanks for coming along, and hopefully we'll see you on the next one.